Okay, so it's Halloween and I am in a Christmas jumper. I'm This is my favorite holiday of the year and I don't give a shit about it any longer. I don't give a shit about any holiday. Halloween, Christmas, Easter, nothing. It means absolutely nothing to me because right now I am living on a planet full of idiots that I don't want to live on. I do not want to be here. I do not like this place. I do not like the human species. I do not like anything about this world, and I feel like a prisoner on a planet that I really don't want to be on. So I want to die every single day. I've been wanting this for way too long, and anyway, I just came across a video that's kind of filled me with anger, I guess. It's I had a lot to say, so I'll post a link in the video, but it's about a woman who was in an abusive relationship. The BBC was trying to give a report about it, and at first when I saw her shot, like unable to move, I swear somewhere in the video said that she was kidnapped and tortured for 2 years. So I'd kind of put myself in a mindset of, oh, whoever would do this is a total monster. There's no time uh, long enough that will justify doing this for someone for their whole life. But yeah, after a minute or two, I was like, this is just talking about an abuse, and then they showed a couple of bruises on her arm, and I'm just like, yeah, that just looks like she's bumped into something. I mean, how do you even know that is to do with an abuse or an attack? I mean, there were terrible things being said, that she was slammed against a wall and called a slut, and she ended up having some sort of epileptic fit, and the guy apparently said, "Do you want some more?" which is a horrible behaviour. So I based on that, I feel absolutely no reason to want to sympathise with this guy or to support him. So anything that I say on this video, it's not in defence of him. He sounds like a terrible, terrible person, but there are two sides of every story. Why was she with him? Why did she not go to the police? There was no report about this, about her going to the police, reporting this. If someone pushes you against the wall and then forces some sort of epileptic fit to come on you, and is saying whilst doing this, "You ugly slut," or "Shall I give you some more?" Threatening to kick you some more when you're having an epileptic fit. I mean, this is disgusting behaviour. But you have to look at things from the two perspectives. Why did this woman not go to the police? Why did she report this? Why didn't she report this? Why didn't she tell other people this? I'm hearing this story and it sounds terrible, but I'm also thinking, well, she's stupid. She's stupid for not reporting it. She's stupid for thinking that this is her only option. And there was thousands and thousands of messages where he calls her a slut and all this, and I am thinking this sounds terrible, but I'm also sort of trying to get a sense of character. Some girls are just like, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't shag him for the world," and then they'll start saying like terrible things like, "Okay, she didn't speak like that." But there are some people that can be very, very cruel to other people, and when other people are cruel to them, they kind of just see it as like, that's the language, that's the lingo. Some people just swear a lot, and they don't see it as being abusive or offensive. They just see it as, this is how I talk. I talk like shit, and I use the word shit all the time, and I love using the word fuck and all these swear words. And then they start adding all these sort of languages. I can't blur out these videos because I don't, but it doesn't, because I can't, I don't have a beeper, I'm not editing this video. But there's some people that have this kind of language, and then it does make me think, if him treating her like this way was just normal behaviour, maybe there's a small part of her that thought that this is how it's fine to treat people. So maybe there's parts where she treated other people in a similar kind of language. I don't know how her language is. There was a clip where she seemed but she was making a video. If you're making a video for YouTube or whatever, you don't want to be swearing all over it. So just because there's a video of her looking like a normal teenager, that doesn't mean that she's not swearing at people behind the backs, behind in real life. We're not filming and stuff. So it just made me think, and I had to skip the part, skip all the intro. I mean, obviously she'd gone through some sort of nasty relationship, but she'd chosen to stay in it. She'd chosen not to seek home. She stayed in a shed one night rather than going to the mum's house, and apparently she didn't want to go to the mum's house because she had bruises on her arm and she didn't want her mum to see. but that things like that proves it's almost like the parents thought that she was in an abusive relationship, but she didn't want them to know, and she deliberately did things to prevent them from knowing. So she chose to hide this from her parents. Why? I don't know why. Why did she do that? Did she not have a good relationship with her parents? Was she swearing at her parents a lot? Was she having, some people have a very nasty attitude towards their parents, and therefore when the boyfriend starts also having a nasty attitude, they kind of support them up. I've been in this situation because my sister was with a partner for a very long time, and she blanked us out for 10 years of her life, and she didn't treat my mum very nicely, and I've often thought that sometimes it was unfair, and I never really saw George, I shouldn't say the name, sorry. I never really saw this other person be nasty, but he does have a nasty streak. And when the separation happened, this nastiness became very obvious because that's how he was treating my sister. But then again, come to think about it, he'd kind of blanked our family out for a very long time, and my sister was completely okay with this. She saw no warning signs, and then a part of me thinks that she was stupid for being in a relationship with such a horrible person. So when the relationship split up and he started being cruel to Sophie, to my sister, I felt like in a way she should have seen it coming, because all the warning signs were there. And so when I was watching this BBC documentary, I was kind of thinking, is this just a one-sided story? Has something bad just happened to someone, and now you're trying to paint that person up as an innocent victim, and say all these terrible things are happening, but it was all because she was coerced, when really there might have been, stupidity might have been partly involved. And if people are stupid, sometimes they can't see the abuse done on them. There could have been abuse in my sister's case for a long time, but because she wasn't very bright, she couldn't see it as abuse, and because she couldn't see it as abuse, she couldn't feel it as abuse, and therefore, if you can't feel abuse, you don't really know what's going on, because it's just, oh yeah, he calls me a slag, he calls me a slut, but that's just how it is. It is stupid, but you're not offended by it, and therefore to portray this person as being offended by or affected by it when really she just doesn't see it. I don't know, but I felt like that was being felt. I was wanting to say this, but because the BBC is it's very designed from a human perspective. This is how humans think. Humans want to take one side, and then they want to just have this one-sided view, and I'm not like that. And therefore I try and get an actual sense of what the BBC are not saying in these videos. And well, my first instinct was to find out how she actually got like this. And it turned out that she fell out of a moving vehicle. And the moving vehicle did not say if it was out the front door or if it was out the back door. Was she taken into this van and just held captive in the front door? This makes so much difference, because if she would have been in the front door, then it would have shown that the door probably would have been opened at any point, so she could have got out at any point. So why choose to get out in a motorway? That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, because it didn't show, it doesn't need to show it just needs to say it. How did she get out out of that vehicle when it was driving on a motorway? Was it because she was in the back part and it's all closed, there's no window, so she didn't, if you open up a door, you don't expect to be on a motorway. You don't know how fast you're moving. You could be on a side road, you could be in a motorway, you don't know. But if this woman was kind of stupid enough to be with this guy who has obviously treated her like crap, the possibility that she was in the front, knew she was on a motorway, and somehow thought that if she just opened the door and got out, or opened the door, maybe he would slow down and she could jump out the motorway. But yeah, that is a very stupid thing. To think that you can jump out of a moving car when on a motorway and be okay, that really does show a high level of stupidity. But then based on all the text messages that she was receiving, and yet chose to hide from her parents, and not tell people that he was treating her this way, all this kind of suggested that she wasn't very bright. And so maybe she was in the front seat, maybe she did know she was on a motorway, and maybe she did think that by jumping out of a car when on a motorway should be okay, when clearly that is not the truth, and that is not what's going to happen. But if that is the truth, and if she did jump out knowing she was on a motorway, or if she did open the door knowing that she might even get sucked out of the door, she has to take some responsibility for her own death. I'll call it a death, even though she survived and has kind of been left with severe paralysed brain injuries and stuff. I feel like it's a death, because her whole life is ruined, and she's not going to be able to use the functions of her she's not going to be able to walk, or she couldn't even move her hands. Like, it was really minimal, unless of course that was an exaggeration by the cameras. And because this is a sort of, I feel that there's some sort of one-sided view going on here. I feel like maybe there's a possibility that it could be exaggeration, because I don't trust BBC any longer. I don't trust BBC when I see things like this. And but yeah, the one thing that I was shocked about at the end is that they said that this guy got 7 years. 7 years. So he's literally grabbed someone off the street. He's grabbed his girlfriend off the street, dragged her into a van. I'm not sure if it's at the front or the back. She's somehow got out of the vehicle. Was she pushed? You know, if she was pushed, and if you can prove that it was he had pushed her, or he had threatened her and said, you know, I'm going to lock you up and I'm going to do this and that, and then she's got scared and jumped out. You know, if it was something like that, then I feel like he deserves 25 years. You know, you've actually caused a murder, and your intent was to cause a huge amount of harm, or perhaps even death if she didn't do what she said. You know, that's a very serious, that's kind of him being like an animal. And based on some of the things that I said, I feel like he does act in a sort of animalistic way. So I feel, because of that, no need to want to defend him. But yeah, if that is not the case, and if it was literally just he wanted to talk to her to try and get her to like him, or I don't know, it would be stupid to do it in that way. But if she just stupidly opened the door and got sucked out, or was maybe locked in the back and opened the door not realizing she was on the motorway and ended up getting stuck. You know, once the back door on a motorway is open, there'll probably be very little things to hold on to, and getting sucked out is probably quite high. So I don't believe. I think it's less likely that she jumped, and more likely that she opened the door and got sucked out. But where she was will largely depend on what happened. But yeah, and it didn't say in this video if she was in the front or the back. But yeah, I just I feel kind of the fact that this incident went to court. So that they knew the situation, they had the evidence, they had the text, they had all the backstory of the guy, all the backstory of the female. She's obviously woken up in the coma. The only reason why she survived the coma was because the parents insisted that the coma, that they keep giving her oxygen and they don't, you know, cancel. They did the scans. They've worked out that she had a fractured skull, and that she wasn't going to be coming out of it okay. She was going to come out of with severe brain disorders. You know, they knew all that, and yet they still chose to have the monitor on and to keep her alive. And she did wake up. She did survive. They took this to court, and he got 7 years. 7 years. Now, if she would have died that night, if she would have jumped out that car, or been sucked out that car, or been pushed out that car even, you know, and died straight away, he would have got 25 years easily. You know, they would have called this manslaughter. They would have said the only reason why she was in the car is because she was literally kidnapped and forced, and any guy, and then they'll take all the back history of what he said and see that this is obviously a premeditated, not murder, but manslaughter, premeditated manslaughter. So he could have easily gotten 25 years. But because she didn't die, because she was forced onto life support and was forced to stay alive, and because she managed to wake up and was very paralyzed, but maybe there was a small chance that she could have recovered it with time, you know, but because of that, he got 7 years. So it's like you're rewarding people, you know. It doesn't matter what you do, what your relationship's like, what happens. It doesn't matter the fact that she almost died. The only thing that matters is whether that person dies or not. I mean, don't you think that's just so sick? It's like, if that was anyone else, if that was, you know, I'm sure that there would have been a ton of people that would have died in that circumstance, and he would have instantly got 25 years. But because she didn't die, and because she's now going to be suffering for the rest of her life because of this, it was reduced to 7 years. It's just like, to me, that is a sign that people don't give a shit about any abuse, relationships, the past history, the kidnap. It doesn't mean anything. The only thing that matters is whether that person lives or dies, even though them living or dying might actually just be a coin toss chance. You know, when I pushed, it was about 10 years ago. It wasn't hugely long ago. But when my mum just aggravated me, and I got angry and I pushed her back, you know, she kind of fell, and her head. She fell on, I think it was carpet at the time. I'm sure it was carpet at the time. but there was definitely marble in the bathroom, and her head landed on the marble. And I guess I have a bit of a not wanting to have marble all over the floor in case something like that happens, because it'd be so easy. But if someone does something and it causes causes it, and say if what happened could have, my mum could have had a skull fracture from something like that, because you just banged your head on marble. And she was also older as well. She's I think in her late 60s now, but she would have been in her late 50s. So it's the age as well. If you're older, your body parts break and stuff, and it's just amazing to think that it doesn't matter anything, but that if they live or die, even though it could be a toss and carry, a toss and turn or something. I don't know what's it. They say there's a 50% chance of living, 50% chance of dying. There's so many times where this has happened, where someone has done something like a kind of manslaughter on someone, and there's a 50% chance that they live, 50% chance that they die. And it's amazing to think that even though it's just coincidence if they live or die, even though it could just be fate or the hard work of the doctors or the determination of the parents to keep that person alive, the outcome of the person being punished, whether they get 7 years or 25 years, this will depend solely on this sort of coin toss. There we go. Coin toss of a chance. And I just feel like that to me is proof that humans don't care about abuse or suffering that's caused on people. The only thing they care about is life and death, and their motivation and morals about the importance of being alive, even if you're left paralyzed, even if this is not, if my parents see me on a ventilator and they know that I'm going to, if I wake up, that I'm going to come out of it with brain problems and probably not being able to function my body properly, and if they have deliberately done something that keeps me alive and then I wake up and have to spend the rest of my life paralyzed, I would hate them. I would vilely, vilely hate them because of my strong morals in believing in that this is actually causing suffering on people. You are forcing people into enslavement by doing that, and to think that by forcing them into some sort of permanent slavery, you actually reward the person who did it by saying, okay, you didn't kill them, so we're going to give you a much reduced sentence. Okay, when they realized how severe it was and how she's not going to recover from it, that's when the sentence got changed from the 7 years to 12 years. But I just think, why is it that you judge someone based on whether or not they die or not? I mean, why would you judge a crime like this on the sole belief, on the sole outcome of whether or not that person lives or died? When my mum fell over and banged her head on the skull, banged her head on the marble, her head could have cracked and it didn't. But if it had have, I could have gone down for manslaughter, even though, I don't know, like, I don't know, maybe, I don't even know, like, how much force would need to go into how many people have fallen onto marble and had their skull cracked. I don't know. But if you look at the results on how many people have fallen out of a moving car and lived versus how many died, if it really is, if the chance of her surviving that, the father was saying how it was a miracle that she survived. Just like, no, it's not a miracle that she survived. She should have died that night, and because she didn't die because you saved her, that the guy almost got let off by only having 7 years, and she's now going to have to live a horrible life. Whereas if she would have died, reincarnation is the truth, and therefore my morals are that if someone is destined to live a life of misery and suffering because their body doesn't work, my morals are to allow that person to make the choice about whether they live or die. And if they're in a coma, it's hard. I think if they're in a coma, you should let the parents decide. But yeah, I really, really don't want you to let my parents decide, because my parents are idiots and I would not want them to make... I know what I would want. If I'm in a coma and I'm half dead, please just kill me. That is my... I'm even willing to wear what's that little necklace that say kills me if I'm ever in a coma. I'm fed up of being alive, and they believed that they were doing the right thing by keeping their child alive, and And I don't want to say it was the wrong thing, because maybe her skull would have healed, maybe there would have been less less damage, maybe she would have been able to function her arms and body better. She could move it, but it was kind of like that, like mild. Maybe it will recover in time, but if what I saw is true, I don't think it will, and I think she would have been better off dying. The guy getting 12 to 15 years. I would say probably if it's an accident, if he was just kidnapping her as a sort of kind of joke, this is what we kind of do, and I've done this before, and I've taken her somewhere nice, and then I've treated her like, if his plan was to kidnap her and then take her to a really expensive fancy restaurant and treat her and stuff like that, well, I guess that's different. If his plan was to kidnap her and then take her to some basement, well, that would be more incentive for her to jump out. So I feel like I kind of need to know what his actual plan was, and the video didn't say that, and I just got the feeling like anything that might have helped defend him was taken out of this BBC video, because the BBC video just wanted to side with the parents and with the victim, who's now left paralysed, and I just, because of that, I feel like I'm just seeing a one-sided view, and I don't want to be on the side of humans. I want to create a better world where we don't have people that are disabled and spending their whole life hating the person that caused their demise, when really they should have just died. They should have just got a new body. The parents should have just accepted that they lost the child. But to be honest, it sounded like that they lost the child as soon as she started dating this guy, because she seemed to date him and want nothing to do with the parents, which again is similar to what happened to my sister. My sister started dating someone and we lost all contact, and she was never in our life, and nothing bad happened to her. But if something bad would have happened to her, and then we later found that there was abuse, there would be very little that we could do, because she refused to tell us anything. And because she refused to tell us anything, we can't use that as proof that stuff was actually happening. And there being a couple of bruises on her arm are not evidence that this was a long-term domestic abuse. I mean, I think the text messages of him calling her a slut and slag, that is evidence of abuse. But why did she not think this is wrong? Why did she not think I don't want to be with this guy? If she's chosen to be with him, it's because she's recognized a similarity. And you could say, oh, because she felt guilty and stuff. Well, no, that's not the case. I feel there's a friend that tries to keep wanting to be my friend, and I feel kind of, in a way guilty about not wanting to be his friend. And he wrote me a text message about how he loves me and stuff, but I don't believe it, because we have very different views, we have very different opinions. With this one, again, I think he would take the side of the BBC and just be like, oh, he was a horrible person, he was a monster, he was treating her badly. And I'm just like, yeah, but every single one of those text messages were things that he was saying to her. That's like me saying this person is a monster, but then only showing the text messages that, that this person has sent me. And me like avoiding all the text messages that I've said to him. Sometimes I am very rude when it comes to people who don't believe that I'm God. I do swear at them and tell them I want them to die. And therefore, if they're going to start writing horrible things back to me, in a way, I feel like sometimes I deserve it, because I'm telling them that I think they're scum. But yeah, if you wanted to take sides, you would only take the other person's perspective, and you wouldn't start looking at the faults of the victim. And there was no faults. According to this video, there was no faults in the victim, and there is faults. What, you've chosen to be with the guy who calls you shit and sag and stuff, so there is a fault with you, because you've chosen to be with someone that treats you so terribly. And to just mark that only as coercion, and then to put no blame on that person whatsoever, I just feel like it's a one-sided story. But it's true that if BBC would have told it in the way that I would have told it, a lot of humans would probably look at me as if I was some sort of monster. What? She was obviously coerced, but the reason why they would take the human approach is because humans are stupid, and therefore there is a lot of humans that would take this, oh, but he was this, he was that, oh, he gave me something nice. There's a lot of people that would take this coercion, because they would feel this coercion they would feel, oh, I've had a partner that I didn't really want to be with, but he started doing lots of nice things for me, and then I started sympathizing. So it would be easy for them to take the human approach, whereas I want to create a new species, of sprites. Sprites think for themselves. If sprites, if a sprite, this is what my term is for the new human. If a sprite heard someone call them a slut and a slag, they would actually be like, hey, no, I'm not that. Look, I don't want to have anything to do with you if you do call me that once more, I'm going to not see you again, and I'm going to report these abusive text messages that you sent. This is what a smart person does. This is how a smart person handles it. But a stupid person handles it like, oh, they don't mean it. Oh, we always use this kind of language. I called my neighbour a slut too. So yeah, and he said that my cousin was a slut. I mean, I bet my sister's husband has said all sorts of terrible things about me during their 10 years of marriage, and I bet my sister sided with him and said, oh yeah, she's useless. She can't even get a job. So yeah, she's stupid. I bet my sister has said a ton of horrible things about me when her husband was, and they did that because they both agreed with each other and they both sided with each other on views, and then when the relationship happened, he started kind of abusing her and taking her child away, and then saying a ton of allegations that I don't believe were true or might have been true but were exaggerated, doing all that to try and keep the child away from her, and he's got restraining orders on her, and she's ended up in a bit of a mess because of that. But she was with him for a long time, so she could have seen it. But the human approach is just to be like, oh no, but she didn't. She's a nice person. She couldn't see it. Rather than the realistic approach, which is that she's a stupid person who should have seen these signs as a warning. She shouldn't have been led or misled. But I think humans, as a species, are very misled, and they're very tempted to take sides and to see a victim. If someone ends up being beaten, they'll take the side of that person and want to demonize the other person. But this is all just a very human approach, and this is one of the reasons why I hate humans so much, because they would see someone like me as being a monster for just trying to actually state what I see, which is that there could be faults on both sides, and I didn't feel that the documentary showed it. And I know if the documentary had have shown both sides, the parents of the victim might actually be like, oh, I can't believe they said that, I can't believe they did that, and it's just, if that's trauma that she's faced is going to be permanent for the rest of her life, then it would have been better that she died that day. And therefore the heroes who saved her life did not save her life. They actually just forced her into imprisonment and enslavement of her own body. And they could have prevented that if they weren't so selfish as to think that I'm just going to do whatever I can to keep this girl alive, regardless to the suffering that she's going to be faced and caused because of being alive. God made death, and part of the joy and good thing, and the part of the goodness about death is that it's your chance to get a new body, but you have to be willing to take the risk that you don't know where you're going to go. You don't know what kind of body you're going to get next. You don't know what sex you're going to be. You don't know what family you're going to get. You don't know which country you're going to be in, and this is, it's a risk that you have to take if you don't like the idea of being in a paralyzed body. But if you do like it being in a paralyzed body, then I feel like you've chosen that decision for a reason. And there was a lot of wars in the past, and a lot of people paralyzed a lot of people. There's a lot of people that came back from war with missing limbs and body parts. All these wars and all these problems and all these horrible things were caused by real people, and so I feel like part of the spirit can recognize things that you've done to other people in a past life, and even if it wasn't intentional, if something happens and karma comes back and something like this happens to you, I'm not saying that this is meant to happen, but I'm saying that if you've chosen to live with this sort of suffering, then I feel like there's a part of you that have chosen to live with this for a reason, as a sort of karma way. I'm going to put through this. I like my family enough. I'm going to live for them. But yes, if you are someone like me who has just said, I can't live with this. I don't want this. I want to get out. I don't want to be here. I want to get out this planet. I feel like that is your spirit saying that you don't deserve to be in this position, and I don't believe that I deserve to be in this position. So I am one of those ones that would want to take I would, if the government made suicide legal, I would be taking 100% right now. And by them not allowing this to be legal, you're just going to be causing a lot more suffering. And I feel like my suffering is so great that I'm forced to live in a planet that I don't want to live in. That I hope to cause as much suffering as I can, because I'm fed up of being forced to suffer by these stupid rules. And the more that, you know, assisted suicide is not made legal, the more it's not the longer you keep it not legal for, the more angry I'm going to be. And I feel like I just want nothing to do with society until you can legalize assisted suicide, if that is a person's choice. And I hate how humans think. I hate how humans behave. I hate how they would call me a demon for saying things that I've just said now, even though I'm bringing truth. And because of this, I just feel less and less human, more and more something else. And I'm not in a good mood.